Hi friends, and welcome to Raft. Today, we're going to talk about how I became a world record holder in my first attempt at speedrunning. Like most of the gaming scene recently, I've been pretty interested in playing games quickly, and thought maybe I should have a go at it. It always seems so fun to push a game to its limits, and I appreciate the skill of so many runners in various games. But getting into speedrunning is a bit overwhelming. There's splits, rules, and game knowledge to worry about rather than just my typical mentality of playing games casually. So I thought a good place to start would be something familiar to me. I'm a huge fan of games like Half-Life and Portal, but those games already have well-established speedrunning communities that are highly competitive. But not every game I play had that much going on in the speedrunning scene. If you've seen any of my content before, you probably know that I play a lot of Raft. It's a relatively popular game on both Steam and Twitch, so I expected the speedrun to be fairly competitive. On speedrun.com, however, most of the leaderboards stand empty. That's not to say that there aren't runs, but that most of them are in multiplayer categories, leaving single player all but untouched. What could cause such a popular game to have no runs? Turns out, the board had to be reset this summer with an update that changed the way certain game features worked. But the reset gave me the perfect opportunity. I'll speedrun a game I love, and no matter what I do, I'll get the world record. I can achieve every speedrunner's dream in about an hour. But just because my run was going to be the fastest didn't mean I was going to go into this challenge blind without doing my background research. Between knowledge from my own casual plays, some special challenges, and a lovely explanation from former world record holder Zomgoblin, I learned a few strategies for the speedrun, from specific amounts of various materials to collect to an exact raft layout. Even a game as dependent on RNG as Raft has plenty of decision-making and optimizations. My run is far from perfect, and there are many better runs to be had. But for now, let's go through what my run looked like and the strategies I used. After loading into a new world, the speedrun starts pretty much exactly the same as a casual playthrough. You want to hook in as many materials as possible, prioritizing plastic, wood, and barrels. More than likely, you'll get enough leaves by accident or boredom, so they're not really a huge focus. Barrels specifically are important because they're a fast method for obtaining scrap, and they save plenty of time from otherwise having to gather it from around islands. In total, the run needs about 40 scrap, so you're definitely going to need to collect it underwater, but the more we get this way, the better. The most crucial factor in the speedrun is islands. There are 10 variations of small islands in Raft, 12 if you count the 2 rare islands, but those only have a 2% chance of spawning and aren't hugely different. But the waters around Raft contain the more valuable resources we need to actually make substantial progress. In Raft, to make any story progress, you need 2 special devices, a receiver and 3 antennae. To make those, you need to gather a number of marine resources that can only be found around islands, like metal ore and copper ore, and then you need to melt them into metal and copper bars. To melt the bars, you need a smelter. To build a smelter, you need tons of clay and sand, both of which can also only be found around islands. All in all, this means you need islands to make any substantial amounts of game progress. Here's where it's important to note the differences in game modes. Raft has 3 levels of survival difficulty: easy, normal, and hard. Hard is the most similar to Minecraft's hardcore mode. If you die, it's game over. In normal, you can respawn, but you lose all of your items. But in easy, you can die, respawn, and have your inventory intact. To me, the idea of death warping and not having to stress about my hunger and water bars made easy the most appealing option. I could just jump into the water and gather whatever resources I needed without having to worry too much about Jeremiah the shark. So that's exactly what I did. I learned that I could get the shark to aggro on my raft if I stood on the island for a brief amount of time. I didn't bother anchoring anywhere, so my raft would just keep floating on. I was then free to thoroughly raid the island's resources and wait for the sweet embrace of death to carry me gently back to my raft when I was done. All I had to do was rinse and repeat until I had all of the materials necessary. Unfortunately, gathering enough clay and sand proved to be more difficult than I thought it would be. The run requires a total of 26 of each to make 2 smelters in order to optimize smelting speed. Because my resource gathering was so slow, I opted to just make the first smelter and start my smelting phase while still gathering the remainder of the sand, clay, and copper I needed. At this point, I had also started to lay out my raft in the pillars layout designed by Zomgoblin. This raft layout is relatively resource efficient, and it makes it easy to place the antennae and receivers the necessary distance apart from each other to function. Throughout all this, I was continuously smelting down resources, researching the smelted resources to learn new materials, and crafting up new materials so that I would be ready to place my antennae and receiver as soon as I had enough smelted metal. I was so excited by the process of making story items that I completely forgot about my split, so that split is a tad off. Eventually, I was finally able to place down the story items on my raft and start making headway towards the radio tower. Once again, I was too excited to remember that I had to call my split time, but all in all, that's not a huge deal. This phase of the run is pretty simple. Point your sail in the direction of the radio tower and paddle like your life depends on it. Once you reach the tower, it's just a matter of getting to the top as quickly as you can. That's where time stops. An hour and 14 minutes later, I had finished my first speedrun. Luckily for me, it's also my first world record. So that's the story of how I got a world record during my first ever speedrun. I encourage you to beat my time. Let's breathe some life into the raft speedrunning scene. Plus, it's just a fun game, and I didn't find the speedrun too stressful. Best of luck on the high seas to you. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I really enjoyed learning the run, and I hope to try other speedruns in the future. Maybe I'll even optimize this one. But for now, that's where the story ends. Let me know if you try your own run because I'd like to see it. And as always, have a great day.